March 15, 1962. Washington, D.C. Beverly Reid adjusted her white gloves and straightened her Pan American Airways uniform in the reflection of the airport window. 7 years as a flight attendant had taught her to present perfection, regardless of how she felt inside. Today marked her 3rd anniversary as a widow, 3 years since Howard had died in that car accident on the Baltimore Parkway. The airline had offered her bereavement leave, but Beverly had returned to work after only 2 weeks. The endless cycle of transcontinental flights provided a comforting routine, a way to outrun grief at 500 miles per hour. Final boarding call for Pan American Flight 114 to Vienna crackled over the terminal speakers. Beverly gathered her cabin bag and made her way toward the gate. At 32, she was one of the senior stewardesses, respected for her efficiency and discretion. The Vienna route had become her regular assignment over the past year, a fact she appreciated for its predictability. The Cold War had transformed air travel into something far more complex than it had been when she'd started, with heightened security and passenger scrutiny now part of every international flight. "Morning, Beverly," said Captain Harrison Grayson as she boarded. "Vienna again. You must have friends there by now." "Good morning, Captain," Beverly replied with a practiced smile. "Just doing my job." The truth was that Vienna had become a kind of sanctuary. Something about the city, balanced precariously between East and West, resonated with her. Perhaps it was because Vienna itself seemed to exist in a state of elegant mourning for its imperial past, much as she quietly mourned for Howard. The flight was routine, a mix of businessmen, diplomats, and a few tourists brave enough to venture toward the Iron Curtain. Beverly moved through the cabin with practiced grace, serving meals, offering blankets, and managing the occasional anxious flyer. 8 hours later, they touched down at Vienna International Airport. "Enjoy your 48 hours," Captain Grayson called as the crew disembarked. "See you for the return leg." The Pan Am contracted taxi delivered Beverly to the Hotel Imperial, where the airline housed its crew. After checking in, she changed into civilian clothes, a modest blue dress with a light cardigan, and headed out for an early dinner at Café Central, where the schnitzel reminded her of her grandmother's cooking. It was during these solitary moments that Beverly found herself questioning her life's trajectory. Howard had wanted children. She had 2 once. Now she inhabited a peculiar limbo, belonging nowhere and everywhere, crossing the Atlantic twice weekly like a modern Persephone shuttling between worlds. After dinner, she wandered toward Stephansplatz, admiring the cathedral illuminated against the night sky. She was about to turn back toward her hotel when she noticed a man watching her from across the square. When their eyes met, he didn't look away as a casual observer would. Instead, he nodded slightly and turned down a side street. Beverly shivered, despite the mild spring evening. Perhaps it was nothing. Vienna was full of strange characters, after all. Still, she hurried back to her hotel, suddenly aware of footsteps behind her that seemed to match her pace. The next morning, Beverly found an envelope under her door. Inside was a single piece of hotel stationery with a handwritten note. "Your husband would be proud of your service. Marion Gas 10, 3 p.m. today." Beverly's hands trembled. Howard had been dead for 3 years. Who would mention him now and in this way? She should report this to the hotel manager or even the American embassy. Instead, she tucked the note into her purse. At 2:55 p.m., Beverly stood across from Marion Gas 10, a nondescript apartment building in a quiet district. She had told herself she was simply curious, that she would look from a distance and leave. Yet at precisely 3 p.m., she crossed the street and entered the building. A man was waiting in the dimly lit foyer, the same man she had noticed in Stephansplatz. "Mrs. Reid," he said in an American accent. "Thank you for coming. My name is Daniel Foster. I'm with the United States government." "What branch of government sends cryptic notes to flight attendants?" Beverly asked, maintaining her distance. "The kind that doesn't officially exist," Foster replied. "I need to show you something." He led her to a second-floor apartment that contained nothing but a table, 2 chairs, and a file cabinet. From the cabinet, he removed a manila folder and placed it on the table. "Please sit." Inside the folder were photographs. The first showed Howard, alive and walking down a Moscow street. The date stamp read November 12, 1961, nearly 2 years after his supposed death. "That's not possible," Beverly whispered. "I'm afraid it is, Mrs. Reid. Your husband didn't die in that car accident. The body was another man of similar build. Howard Reid defected to the Soviet Union in 1959. No. The word came out as a denial, a plea, and a question all at once. Howard worked for the Department of Agriculture. He researched wheat yields. Foster's expression remained impassive. Howard Reid was a senior analyst for the Defense Intelligence Agency with access to NATO deployment strategies. He's been sharing that information with Soviet intelligence for years. Beverly stared at the photographs, bile rising in her throat. The man was unmistakably Howard. The way he held his shoulders, the particular tilt of his head as he looked at something across the street. She recognized the tweed coat she had given him for Christmas in 1958. "Why are you showing me this?" she finally asked. "Because Howard wasn't working alone. He was part of a network, what we believe to be the most extensive Soviet spy ring operating within the U.S. government. And we need your help to uncover the rest of them." "My help? I'm a flight attendant." "You're also someone who flies regularly into and out of sensitive locations, someone who interacts with diplomats and officials, someone who could move information without raising suspicion." Foster leaned forward. "Most importantly, you're someone the Soviets might approach because of your connection to Howard." "I was lied to for our entire marriage," Beverly said, her voice hardening. "What makes you think I would help you?" "Because you're a patriot, Mrs. Reid. And because if you don't help us, you'll be investigated as a potential accomplice. Your reputation, your career, your freedom, all gone." The threat hung in the air between them. "What exactly would I have to do?" she asked finally. "Nothing active at first. Just be aware. Notice if anyone approaches you. Report any unusual contacts or requests. Keep flying your regular routes." Beverly thought of the passengers on her flights, the diplomats with their locked briefcases, the businessmen who spoke in hushed tones. Had any of them been part of Howard's network? Had she unknowingly served drinks to people who had helped destroy her life? "And if no one approaches me, then we'll need to make them approach you." June 3, 1962. Vienna. 3 months had passed since Beverly's meeting with Foster. She had continued her normal routine, flying the transatlantic route twice weekly, staying in the same hotels, visiting the same cafes. Nothing unusual had occurred, and she had begun to wonder if Foster's revelation about Howard had been some elaborate hoax. Then, on her 4th Vienna layover in June, it happened. She was having coffee at Café Mozart when a middle-aged woman in a fashionable suit sat down at her table. "Ms. Reid, I believe we share a mutual friend." The woman's English was perfect but carried a faint Eastern European accent. Beverly's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. "I'm sorry, I don't believe we've met." "No, but you knew my cousin Mikhail very well. Or rather, you knew him as Howard." Beverly set down her coffee cup carefully, aware that her hands might betray her. "I think you're mistaken." The woman smiled. "There's no mistake. Howard sends his regards. He misses you very much and hopes that one day you might understand why he had to leave as he did." "Who are you?" Beverly asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Irina Petrov. I work for an international cultural exchange program, just as Howard does now." She slid a small package across the table. "He wanted you to have this, a token of his enduring affection." Before Beverly could respond, Irina stood and walked away, disappearing into the crowded cafe. The package contained a small amber pendant, identical to one Howard had promised to buy her on a trip they'd planned to take to Leningrad but had never made. That evening, Beverly met Foster in a safe house on the outskirts of Vienna. "She called him Mikhail," Beverly said, still struggling to process the encounter. "She said he was her cousin." Foster took notes. "Interesting. Howard has fully embraced a Soviet identity." "What did she want?" "Nothing. She just gave me this." Beverly handed over the pendant. Foster examined it carefully. We'll need to have this analyzed. Could contain microfilm or a transmitter. She said she works for a cultural exchange program. Classic KGB cover. Cultural attaches have diplomatic immunity and freedom to travel. Foster looked up from the pendant. This is good, Beverly. They've made contact. Now we need to develop the relationship. You want me to spy on them? I'm not trained for this. We don't need you to be James Bond. We just need you to be yourself. A woman who might be interested in reconnecting with her not-so-dead husband. And what if they ask me to do something illegal? Then you'll do it under our supervision. The only way to uncover this network is from the inside. August 19, 1962, Moscow. Beverly stood in Red Square, trying not to appear as terrified as she felt. After months of careful communication through Irina, she had been granted a cultural visit to Moscow. The KGB, believing her sympathetic to Howard's ideology, had arranged the trip through Soviet Travel Authority interest. Foster and his CIA colleagues had prepared her extensively. She carried no surveillance equipment, nothing that could identify her as working with American intelligence. Her only mission was to meet Howard and establish trust. A man approached her from behind. The cathedral is beautiful in the morning light, isn't it? Beverly turned. Howard stood before her, older and somehow harder than she remembered, but undeniably her husband. Why? It was the only word she could manage. Howard glanced around before taking her elbow and guiding her toward a quieter corner of the square. Not here. We're being watched. By your people or mine? Beverly asked bitterly. A flicker of surprise crossed Howard's face. You've grown sharper, Bev. Finding out your husband faked his death tends to do that. Howard led her to a small tea shop with steamed windows and a smoky interior. They sat in a corner booth where their conversation would be masked by the ambient noise. I never wanted to hurt you, Howard began. But I couldn't tell you the truth. It was too dangerous for both of us. The truth being that you're a Soviet spy. Howard flinched. The truth being that I believe in a different vision for the world. America is on the wrong side of history, Beverly. The capitalist system exploits millions while a few grow rich. Here, they're building something different. Beverly looked at this stranger wearing her husband's face. Did you ever love me at all? Of course I did. I still do. Howard reached across the table, but Beverly pulled her hands away. That's why I wanted to see you. To explain. To give you a chance to understand. Understand what? That you betrayed your country? That you betrayed me? That I had to choose between personal happiness and my beliefs. Howard lowered his voice. Beverly, I can arrange for you to stay. We could be together again. This was the moment Foster had prepared her for the recruitment attempt. How would that even work? I just disappear from my life. Like I did, yes. A new identity. A new beginning. Howard leaned closer. There are others like me, Bev. Americans who see the truth. We help each other. We could help you. Others in the government? Howard smiled. In the government, in the military, in key industries. We're everywhere. And what would I do here? I don't speak Russian. I don't have any special skills. You're a Pan Am stewardess. You travel constantly between the West and places like Vienna. You interact with diplomats, businessmen. You could be incredibly valuable. Beverly forced herself to appear intrigued rather than horrified. You want me to be a courier? Just to start. Nothing dangerous. Small items. Messages. Howard took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Think about it. You don't have to decide now. October 8, 1962, Washington, D.C., the pendant contained a miniature one-time pad. Foster explained in the CIA safe house. It's used for encoding messages. They're preparing you for active intelligence work. Since returning from Moscow, Beverly had been meeting regularly with Foster and his team. Her Vienna routes continued with periodic contacts from Irina, who was now identified as a KGB officer operating under diplomatic cover. Howard mentioned others, Americans working for the Soviets, Beverly said. He said they were in government, military, industry. We believe they've established the most extensive espionage network since the Rosenbergs, Foster confirmed. But we don't know who they are or how they communicate. That's what we need you to discover. Irina wants me to deliver a package to someone in New York next week. Beverly's hands trembled slightly. A professor at Columbia University. Foster's expression intensified. This is it. They're bringing you into operational activities. What's the professor's name? Walter Sullivan. Department of Physics. Foster made a note. We'll run a background check. If you make this delivery, you'll be committing an act of espionage under U.S. law. I know. Beverly had spent countless nights weighing her actions. But if I don't do it, we'll never identify the network. We can protect you legally, but the risks are real. If the Soviets discover you're working with us. The sentence didn't need completion. They both knew what happened to expose double agents. I want to do this, Beverly said firmly. Howard betrayed everything we had. I need to know why. I need to understand who else was involved. October 16, 1962, New York City. The package was smaller than Beverly had expected. A gift-wrapped box that could contain a book or perhaps a bottle of cologne. Irina had given it to her during their last meeting in Vienna, with explicit instructions. Deliver it personally to Professor Sullivan at precisely 3 p.m. in the university library. The CIA had examined the package using non-invasive methods, confirming it contained microfilm hidden within what appeared to be a rare edition of Pushkin's poetry. They had photographed the microfilm but left it intact. Beverly needed to complete the delivery to maintain her cover. Columbia University's library was crowded with students preparing for midterm examinations. Beverly found Sullivan in a private study room on the 3rd floor, just as Irina had described. A distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Professor Sullivan? Beverly approached with practiced casualness. I have a delivery for you from Vienna. A mutual friend asked me to ensure you received it personally. Sullivan looked up, his expression momentarily confused before understanding dawned. Ah yes, thank you. Please have a seat. He accepted the package without opening it, placing it in his briefcase. You're the Pan Am stewardess, correct? How long is your layover in New York? 3 days. Excellent. Then perhaps you could deliver my response as well? I have colleagues who would greatly appreciate some academic materials I've been reviewing. Of course, Beverly replied, maintaining her composure despite her racing heart. Shall I collect it before my departure? Yes, tomorrow evening. There's a bookshop in Greenwich Village called Prometheus Books. 7 p.m. After leaving the library, Beverly made her way to a department store 3 blocks away. In a changing room on the 3rd floor, she met with an FBI agent posing as a sales clerk. Sullivan is involved, she whispered. He's preparing materials for me to take back to Vienna. The exchange is tomorrow at Prometheus Books in Greenwich Village. The next evening, Beverly arrived at the bookshop precisely at 7. Prometheus Books was exactly what one might expect of a Greenwich Village establishment. Cramped shelves packed with philosophy texts, political manifestos, and avant-garde literature. A bell tinkled as she entered. The proprietor, a bearded man with a thick Russian accent, nodded toward a back room. Professor is waiting. Sullivan sat at a small table, a manila envelope before him. Thank you for coming, Ms. Reid. I've prepared the materials for our Vienna colleagues. Beverly took the seat across from him. I'm happy to help. Howard speaks very highly of your work. Howard? Ah yes, remarkable mind. Such a shame about his change in circumstances. Sullivan pushed the envelope across the table. This contains research notes on neutron reflector efficiency. Our friends will understand their significance. Beverly's blood ran cold. Even with her limited scientific knowledge, she recognized that neutron reflectors were crucial components in nuclear weapons design. I'll ensure it reaches them, she said, taking the envelope. Sullivan studied her for a moment. You're new to this work. Yes. A word of advice, then. Trust no one completely. Not even those closest to you. He smiled thinly. Especially not those closest to you. As Beverly left the bookshop, she fought to keep her composure. Sullivan's envelope now contained nuclear weapons research bound for the Soviet Union, and she was the courier. 3 blocks away, she entered another predetermined location, a laundromat where Foster waited disguised as a maintenance worker. "Sullivan gave me nuclear research," she whispered as he pretended to fix a dryer near her. "Neutron reflector efficiency." Foster's expression remained neutral, but his eyes hardened. "This is bigger than we thought. Return to your hotel. Act normally. We'll need to analyze what Sullivan provided before your flight tomorrow." October 18, 1962, FBI Field Office, New York City. "The information is legitimate," Foster confirmed as Beverly sat in a secure room surrounded by FBI and CIA officials. "Professor Sullivan has access to classified nuclear research through his consulting work with Los Alamos." The senior FBI agent, Thomas Wagner, addressed Beverly directly. "Ms. Reid, you've done exceptional work. Thanks to you, we've identified a critical leak in our nuclear program. Now we need to determine the full extent of this network." "Sullivan mentioned others," Beverly said. "He talked about colleagues in the plural." "That's consistent with our intelligence," Foster agreed. "We believe this ring has members in key positions throughout our defense infrastructure. The question is, how do they communicate? Who coordinates their activities?" Beverly considered Sullivan's parting words. "Trust no one completely, especially not those closest to you." "What if Howard isn't just a defector?" she suggested slowly. "What if he's their handler, operating from Moscow but directing operations here?" The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "It's possible," Wagner finally acknowledged. "Soviet intelligence often uses defectors to manage networks they've left behind. Their intimate knowledge of American systems makes them valuable controllers." "If that's true," Foster added, "then the key to unraveling this entire network lies in Moscow, not here." "With Howard," Beverly finished. November 1, 1962, Vienna. The Cuban Missile Crisis had transformed the geopolitical landscape. As Beverly landed in Vienna, the world was still reeling from how close it had come to nuclear annihilation. Soviet ships had turned back from Cuba just days earlier, backing down from direct confrontation with the American naval blockade. Irina met Beverly at their usual cafe, her expression tense. "Did you deliver the package to Sullivan?" "Yes, and I brought back his response." Beverly handed over the envelope, which the CIA had carefully analyzed and resealed. "He mentioned it contained research notes." Irina took the envelope without opening it. "The current situation has complicated matters. Some of our operations are being temporarily suspended." "Because of Cuba?" Irina's eyes narrowed slightly. "You seem well informed." "It's all over the news," Beverly replied smoothly. "Everyone's talking about how close we came to war." "Indeed." Irina studied Beverly for a moment. "Howard has requested to see you again. In Berlin, not Moscow. The arrangements will be more discreet this time." "Berlin? Isn't that dangerous with the wall and all the tensions?" "East Berlin is perfectly safe for friends of the Soviet Union." Irina wrote an address on a napkin. "3 days from now, a car will collect you at Checkpoint Charlie." After Irina departed, Beverly went directly to the American embassy, where Foster was waiting in a secure room. "Berlin is too risky," he argued after she relayed the conversation. "East German security is unpredictable, especially right now. This could be our best chance to understand the full network," Beverly countered. "Howard trusts me now. He thinks I've proven myself by delivering to Sullivan. Or it could be a trap. The timing, right after the missile crisis, is suspicious. Either way, I'm going." Beverly's resolve had solidified over the past months. "Howard destroyed my life. He betrayed our country. I need to see this through." Foster studied her face, then nodded reluctantly. "We'll establish emergency extraction protocols. If anything feels wrong, you abort immediately." November 4, 1962, East Berlin Gray. That was Beverly's first impression of East Berlin. a monochrome city still bearing the scars of war, now further disfigured by the wall that had divided it 15 months earlier. The Trabant that collected her at Checkpoint Charlie drove through streets patrolled by Volkspolizei in their distinctive uniforms. They arrived at a nondescript apartment building in a residential district. The driver spoke no English but gestured for her to enter. Inside, a heavy-set woman led her to a second-floor apartment without speaking. Howard waited inside, looking more haggard than he had in Moscow. "Thank you for coming," he said, embracing her stiffly. "It wasn't easy to arrange. Irina said it was important." Howard gestured for her to sit while he checked the windows and door. "The situation has become complicated. After Cuba, there's increased scrutiny on all intelligence operations. I delivered the package to Sullivan," Beverly offered. "He gave me research notes to bring back." "I know. That's why I needed to see you." Howard sat opposite her, leaning forward intently. "Beverly, I'm going to ask you something very important, and I need you to be completely honest." Beverly felt a chill of apprehension. "Of course. Were you followed after meeting Sullivan? Did you notice anyone unusual watching you in New York?" She kept her expression neutral while her mind raced. "No. I was careful, just as Irina instructed." Howard studied her face. "Sullivan was arrested by the FBI yesterday. His home and office were searched." Beverly's heart hammered, but years of professional composure helped her maintain a convincingly shocked expression. "That's terrible. Do they know about me? About the delivery?" "That's what I'm trying to determine." Howard stood and paced the small room. If Sullivan talked, the entire network could be compromised. "What network exactly?" Beverly asked, seizing the opportunity. "How many people are involved?" Howard hesitated, then apparently decided to trust her. 12 key assets across military, scientific, and diplomatic sectors, plus support personnel, couriers, safe house operators, communications experts. All Americans? Mostly. Some are naturalized citizens with Eastern European backgrounds. He stopped pacing and faced her directly. "Beverly, I need to know if you've been approached by American intelligence since returning from Moscow." This was the moment of greatest danger and opportunity. Foster had prepared her extensively for this question. "Actually, yes," she admitted, watching Howard's expression harden. "An FBI agent questioned me about my trip to the Soviet Union. They must have flagged my visa application." "What did you tell them?" "That I was trying to find closure, to understand why my husband would defect." She met his gaze steadily. "I said I was confused and heartbroken, but that you had refused to come back with me. That was the end of it." Howard visibly relaxed. "And they believed you?" "They seemed to. There's been no follow-up." Beverly leaned forward. "Howard, what happens now? If Sullivan's been arrested, we need to warn the others." He moved to a shortwave radio concealed in a cabinet. "I'll need your help, Bev. Some of our communications channels may be compromised." "What can I do?" Howard removed a small notebook from his pocket. "These are emergency contact protocols for our key assets. Memorize them, then destroy the paper. On your next Pan AM route, you'll need to alert everyone on this list." Beverly took the notebook with trembling fingers. Inside were 12 names with corresponding cities and contact instructions. She recognized several high-ranking military officers, a State Department official, a NASA engineer, and most shockingly, an FBI counterintelligence agent named Richard Morris. "Morris is FBI," she said, unable to hide her surprise. "He investigates spies, which makes him our most valuable asset," Howard replied. "He's been feeding disinformation to American counterintelligence for years, steering investigations away from our people." Beverly committed the names to memory as instructed, all while maintaining her facade of nervous determination. When she finished, Howard took the notebook and burned it in an ashtray. "There's one more thing," he said, producing a small metal object. "A microfilm decoder. You'll need this to read the messages our assets will give you." "Where should I hide it?" "Inside your compact makeup case. The metal components will match on X-ray machines. As Howard explained the technical details of the decoder, Beverly realized she had what the CIA needed, the complete network identification. Now she just needed to get out of East Berlin alive. November 5, 1962, West Berlin. The extraction happened at dawn. Rather than returning through Checkpoint Charlie, Beverly was guided to a safe house near the border where East German security was less vigilant. A CIA team disguised as maintenance workers helped her through a section of the wall that was under repair, then quickly transported her to the American sector. By noon, she was in a secure facility beneath the U.S. Embassy, reciting the names and contact details from Howard's notebook to Foster and a team of intelligence officials. Richard Morris, Foster repeated, his face ashen. He's Deputy Chief of Soviet Counterintelligence Operations at FBI headquarters. This explains how they've avoided detection for so long. Howard said Morris has been feeding disinformation, directing investigations away from Soviet assets. Beverly confirmed. This is the most significant intelligence breach since Klaus Fuchs, said the CIA station chief. These 12 individuals have access to virtually every major defense and nuclear program we're running. What happens now? Beverly asked. Now we plan the most carefully coordinated counterintelligence operation in American history, Foster replied. We need to arrest all 12 simultaneously, before any can warn the others. And Howard? Foster hesitated. Howard Reid is beyond our reach in Soviet territory. But he's no longer valuable to them once his network is dismantled. They might eliminate him themselves, the station chief added bluntly. The KGB doesn't tolerate failure. Beverly felt a complex wave of emotions. Satisfaction that Howard would face consequences, but also a lingering ache for the man she had once loved. When will you make the arrests? We need about a week to prepare. Every arrest must be perfectly synchronized. Foster studied her face. Which means you need to maintain your cover until then. Return to Vienna as planned. Act normal. What if Irina contacts me? Tell her you delivered Howard's warning to the first person on your list, but haven't reached the others yet. Buy us time. November 12, 1962. Vienna. Beverly sat in Café Central, nursing a coffee and trying to appear calm despite her frayed nerves. The synchronized arrests were scheduled for tomorrow morning across multiple U.S. cities. She had maintained her routine, even flying a round trip to London to avoid suspicion. Irina arrived precisely at noon, sliding into the seat across from Beverly with unusual tension evident in her posture. Were you able to contact them? She asked without preamble. Just Harriman in London, Beverly replied, referring to the State Department official on Howard's list. I'm scheduled to fly to Washington tomorrow where I can reach 3 more. Irina nodded, but something in her expression made Beverly uneasy. Have you heard from Howard? Beverly asked, trying to redirect the conversation. Howard is concerned about your FBI interview, Irina said flatly. He feels you should have mentioned it sooner. Beverly's pulse quickened. It seemed routine. I didn't think. Richard Morris was arrested this morning, Irina interrupted. Somehow they knew exactly who to target. The blood drained from Beverly's face. The arrests weren't supposed to happen until tomorrow. Something had changed. That's impossible, she managed. I only spoke to Harriman yesterday. Irina's eyes hardened. Did you really think we wouldn't have verification protocols, Beverly? Every contact has been instructed to use specific acknowledgement phrases when reached. Phrases you were never given. Beverly realized with horror that she'd walked into a trap. Howard had never intended for her to actually contact the network. He had given her the list to test her loyalty. I don't understand, she said, desperately playing for time. There must be some mistake. Irina's hand moved toward her purse. The mistake was Howard's. He let his feelings for you cloud his judgment. I warned him you couldn't be trusted. Beverly knew she had seconds to act. She knocked over her coffee cup, splashing the hot liquid into Irina's lap. As the woman recoiled, Beverly bolted from the cafe, pushing past startled patrons. Outside, she raced down the crowded street, scanning for Foster's surveillance team. They were supposed to be watching, but in the sea of faces, she couldn't identify them. A black sedan screeched to the curb beside her. The door flew open. "Get in!" Foster shouted from the back seat. Beverly dove into the vehicle as it accelerated away from the cafe. Two men in the front seat, obviously CIA operatives, monitored the street behind them. "Morris talked," Foster explained grimly. "We had to move up the timetable. All assets are being rolled up now." "Irina knows," Beverly gasped. "They tested me. The warning protocols. I didn't have the right acknowledgement phrases." Foster swore under his breath. "We need to get you out of Austria immediately. You're blown." The car sped toward the American embassy, taking an evasive route through Vienna's narrow streets. Inside the embassy's secure zone, Beverly was rushed to a communication center where Wagner, the FBI agent from New York, was coordinating the operation via secure telephone. 9 arrests confirmed, he reported. 2 targets were out of the country. Morris is cooperating fully. "What about Howard?" Beverly asked. Wagner and Foster exchanged glances. "We've received intelligence that he's being recalled to Moscow," Foster said carefully. "The KGB is not pleased with the collapse of his network." Beverly understood the unspoken implication. Howard would likely face severe consequences for the failure of his operation. "What happens to me now?" "You can never return to your normal life," Wagner said bluntly. "The Soviets know your role in dismantling their most valuable spy ring. You'll need a new identity, a new home, a completely new start." November 30th, 1982, Bethesda, Maryland. 20 years later, Barbara Reynolds, formerly Beverly Reid, sat in her modest suburban home, watching news coverage of Leonid Brezhnev's funeral. At 52, she had built a quiet life as a high school English teacher, her true identity known only to a handful of government officials. The doorbell rang. She opened it to find an older Foster, now retired from the CIA, standing on her porch. "It's been a while," she said, inviting him in. 10 years, he agreed, declining her offer of coffee. "I thought you should know. Howard died last week in a Moscow hospital. Natural causes, apparently." Barbara absorbed the news silently. Howard had become an abstraction to her over the decades. Not quite real, more symbol than man. "They never completely trusted him after Vienna," Foster continued. "He spent his final years translating agricultural journals, far from any sensitive work. And the others? The network. Morris served 18 years before being paroled. 2 received death sentences for espionage. The rest are still in federal prison." Foster hesitated. "Barbara, there's something else. The intelligence community has decided to declassify portions of the operation next year. Your role will remain classified, but there may be renewed interest in the case." After all this time, who would care about a Cold War spy story? Foster smiled slightly. "History doesn't forget its pivotal moments. What you did, uncovering that network, changed the course of the Cold War. If their nuclear intelligence operation had continued, who knows what might have happened during the détente years." After Foster left, Barbara walked to her bedroom closet. In a locked box at the back, behind winter sweaters, she kept one memento from her former life, the amber pendant Howard had sent her from Moscow. She held it to the light, studying its golden depths. The pendant contained no microfilm, no transmitter, no secret code, just amber. Perhaps the only honest gift Howard had ever given her. She returned it to its box and closed the closet door, leaving the past safely contained where it belonged. In her living room, she reopened the book she'd been reading when Foster arrived. A history of the Cold War, written by scholars who would never know her real contribution to the world they studied. Barbara smiled faintly at the irony and turned the page.